This is for the week of June 20th through 25th. Here we go. Today is Monday and I'm just stopping in at one of the high rotation plots here, and Mark's just doing a bit of bed prep, turning over some old beds, and then we'll plant these tomorrow to something else. And we've got a few things to harvest here and just some basic maintenance work happening at this site, but it's not too bad because this site is relatively well maintained because we come here so often to harvest and replant. It's Tuesday morning and Mark's are cleaning a bunch of flats. It's something we have to do maybe once a month, sometimes a little less, where we just have to clean off a bunch of flats of the residual root matter on there so that we can use them again for planting more microgreens. So he's come up with a really brilliant way of just putting a clip on the handle and then setting up a couple pieces of wood to keep the flat in place so that he can just kind of turn and burn real quick. And so it's a nice little effective do-it-yourself troubleshooting thing there. Well, with Mark's new method of washing, he did all of these in about half the time as it normally would take. So that's a good one there. Now I'm about to take lunch, but I'm just gonna go and pick all of our zucchinis in patty pans. You know, basically as these start to produce, I've got to pick them whenever they're ready. So I'm usually coming out here and combing them every day just to go over, because I'm looking for a premium size. You know, I'm looking for zucchinis like that. And the ones that I pick on Friday, I'll leave the flowers on, but to leave them on right now and have them sit for a few days, it's not worth it to leave the flowers on because they just wilt down and then they stick to the other ones and it just makes a mess. So, but the ones we pick at the end, we'll keep the flowers on. These are really starting to pick up. So I just picked about, it feels like 15 pounds. Got one super big one. You know, they kind of hide under there. Sometimes you miss them. But at this point, I think they've been in the ground a little over a month. They really start to fly now. We're picking them every day, and we got to check. We got to just go through there and glance through them every day, because if you don't, you get big ones like that, because in one day they'll be big enough to carve a canoe out of them. So you got to really stay on top of them. It's Wednesday morning and I'm about to load up my bike and trailer and head over to a plot to check up on it, and then I'm going to harvest at another one and also do some planting. But first I'm going to just step out into my front yard here, and I got my greens harvester, and I'm going to harvest some spinach. I just recently put brand new blades on this greens harvester, and I also got a really cool new sharpening tool that I'm going to be using. But one thing I wanted to show you is that I used to always, oh, there's my neighbor. That's my neighbor Andy. And anyways, I used to always harvest spinach by hand because the greens harvester has a hard time getting it because the way spinach normally grows. But I started growing this new variety of spinach this year called Reflect, and I really like it because it stands up very well. You can kind of see there, and the greens harvester can get right in there like it can any other bed of greens. Though, you know, to show you this one, for example, you can see how there's still some lower lying leaves that are harder to get, but it's not as bad as other types of spinach. The main spinach I used to grow is called Space, and I had to always harvest it by hand. And so this one I can do with the harvester, and even though there's still a few leaves on the bottom, it's fine for me. It's okay to sacrifice that much to save this much time, because to harvest this by hand might take me 20 minutes, but with the greens harvest it'll take me a couple minutes, so it's a huge time savings. All right, so that was the second cut off that bed. Regenerated in a week, so 7-day regeneration. You can see pretty clean. Pretty clean. Got most of what I needed there. And that's good. Yeah, this variety is definitely a winner. I'll definitely continue with this one and stop growing space. So I'll stick with the Reflect. I like the way it stands high. Usually, what I found over the years is space will stand high when it's colder, but as it gets warmer, it starts to spread out. I don't know why that is. It's just what I've noticed. But this Reflect variety is still standing high all the time. So for all intents and purposes, it looks exactly the same as space. It yields the same, but it stands higher. So definitely a winner in my books. So the reason I'm out here right now on a Wednesday harvesting greens for Friday is because it's supposed to rain tomorrow and Friday. So if I can get a bunch of these greens harvested in the morning, like now, when they're nice and crisp and it's dry, it's perfect. Then I'll have to do very little with them. And I mean, we're still washing our greens, especially for the grocery stores. We're washing all of our greens, but they're easier to wash when they're not rained on too, because all they really need is a good dunk, and we're mainly just looking to get bugs out. There's no dirt that has to be removed because it hasn't been raining and kicking the dirt up off the greens. So since it's going to rain tomorrow and Friday, I might as well harvest what I can right now. That's my strategy. Okay, I'm out with the bike, and I've just swung by this plot to do some quick planting, and I'll just explain what I'm planting and why. So this bed was red Russian kale, cut about 3 times. I'm going to put spinach there, so I'm rotating the plant family. This bed was spinach that failed, so I'll put arugula there. And this bed was, I forget what it was actually. Actually, no, it was spinach too. So that will go red Russian. So we'll go arugula, red Russian, spinach. That's what we're gonna do. And then we've rotated different plant families for each of the beds that was previously there. So I just did that bed of spinach, 5 rows. And just one thing about spinach is normally I would have stopped planting it by now, but we've had a little bit of a cooler June than in previous years, and I looked at the 2-week forecast, and I've got about a week window where I'm staying below 25 Celsius, so I've justified planting another bed of spinach. So normally I would have been done planting spinach by now, but I'm going to do one more 50-foot bed just because I think I can get away with it. It'll germinate in the nice and cool, and if it gets hot in the next few weeks, that'll be okay because it'll be germinated and established. I might only get 1 cut, but I'm hoping I get a decent yield. And I timed it perfectly because I'm almost out of spinach seed, so I bought just enough seed for the season to get what I needed there. One thing about spinach too I'll point out is I use the earthway seeder for spinach, and I use the chard plate, the beet plate. So I dump quite a bit down, and it's a pretty heavy, thick stand. Here's the last succession of it, and it's even a little spotty in there. We had some irrigation problems a little while ago that caused some of that. So, but once it fills out, it'll be nice and thick. We'll get a few cuts off that. But the only thing I use the earthway seeder for now is spinach and beets, and I finally figured out a way of planting beets that I like, and that is to tape. I just take some masking tape and tape every second hole on the beet plate, and then I plant beets at 4 rows in a 30-inch bed, and so that's been working good this year. Okay, I'm just riding my bike along here, just off the highway, and there's a deer. Hey, little guy, you should get off the highway. Okay, well, at least she got into some greenery there. A little nervous for her though, because we're half a block off the highway and right next to another major street here. Just pulling into this plot to check on it. Look at this. This was heaping. last last Wednesday. Now it's all cooked down. I'll shovel that back in that box there, and I came to just check on how things are doing here, and looks like they're doing great. I'm gonna cut this arugula again. Might even just do a little haircut and even out that red Russian bed, because I could use some right now anyways, because I might as well harvest it now than tomorrow in the rain. And just looking at my germination here, we planted this red Russian last Wednesday. These carrots were planted 2 weeks ago. Nice even germination here. So as I get into the summer, I change my density of carrots to 5 rows. I start with 7 rows. My first planting I do 7 rows because I harvest a baby crop to get it earlier. And then once I get into summer production, I go to 5 rows. So other things here, got some of my turnips, radishes here. They're doing okay, but they're not great because we only have 3 rows of drip irrigation on here, and we haven't changed that, and I think it's time that we do. So we're gonna have to come back in here and install 2 more lines of drip, or yeah, 3 more lines of drip on those beds. And you know, one thing I'm doing this year is, because I have a little bit more land available to me, I'm just trying to use more passive techniques, and we're just doing tarpon in the main season. So instead of coming in and pulling out beds, in fact we did pull those out last week, but there was still a lot of residual stuff there, so we just tarped it because I don't need to plant them for another week. So that will make turning those over next week a lot easier. And just looking here, we planted these 2 beds of arugula last Wednesday. It was that day we really crushed this plot. And nice, perfect, even germination. Very few weeds in here except the odd little, residual crop stuff and some of the odd big weed here and there. But for the most part, they're looking pretty good. And these turnips in here, those are looking good for next week. So I'm just gonna crop out these 2 beds and then I'm out of here. Okay, if you guys remember last week, this red Russian bed was the one that I did the manicure, the haircut for, and here's the benefit of that. You get a nice second cut that has relatively good consistency. You know, you've got nice, relatively consistent sized leaves and short stems. That's the key. You know, there's the odd little big leaf like that, but we usually just thin those ones out, sort those ones out. But you know, that's the main reason for that giving the bed a haircut like that, is you get a nice second cut. So that's about 15 pounds from that bed. And you know, one of the things that's great about red Russian is that it's just a consistent crop, not a heavy yielder. The first cut's always the biggest yield, and then the second and third and fourth cuts from there are around the same. Like I'll get about 15 pounds off one 50-foot bed cut. So, but if you multiply that over the total, like I think I pulled about 30 pounds off it last week. So if I get 3 more cuts of 15 pounds each, that's another 45 pounds. It's a total of 75 pounds of a crop I can sell anywhere between $8 and $10 a pound. So that's pretty good for a crop that will be out of the ground. That'll be done in about 2 or 3 more weeks. All right, so that is the arugula. 2 totes there, got about, I think that's about 30 pounds. Feels about 15 pounds each. And arugula is very similar to red Russian. You get the first cut will be your biggest cut, and then your cuts after that will go down a little bit. So this time of year, I'm lucky to get 2 cuts. The reason I'm getting 2 right now is because it's been cooler. Once I get into July, it's probably 1 cut and then it's out. But I might be able to get a 3rd cut out of that bed. So that's the second cut. The first cut, I got about 60 pounds from that bed. Big yield, nice and thick. Second cut, you get a slightly more serrated looking leaf. And again, it's a little bit more bitter, a little bit more robust, a bit tougher. Some chefs like the second cut, some chefs like the first cut. I've never really marketed them differently, but I do know which of my chefs prefer each one, and so I usually will give them the ones that they prefer, because the first cut's more mild and a little bit more tender. The second cut's more pungent and a little bit more robust. And so I kind of sell it to the people I know will like the particular one. So that's it for this plot. I'm just gonna load the bike back up and head back to the main farm. I'm gonna head back to that plot that I just came from and just go and fix those irrigation lines right now. I brought a hose so that I can hand water them to give them a nice spread so they can germinate now, because it's, you know, I'm almost past the window where they're all germinated, and then nothing else will germinate because it'll rot, or the seed will die. So if I hand water it in now, set up this irrigation, hopefully I can save those radishes to the point where I get 100% germination. What I'm bringing here is I've pre-cut my drips. So those beds are 33 feet long. So I pre-cut and measured 3 more lines to pop in there. Got a little tool here to cut anything that I have, and then I got a little bag of fittings that I need to tie in those lines, and a little popper if I need to use some of these pieces like this. And that's all I'm bringing. So I just came here to put all this stuff together, and I'm hoping that I brought one of these, a straight connector. I'll show you why. I was just uncovering these beds to you know, get the drip irrigation underneath them, and I noticed this little hole. Okay, why do I have a hole like that? Well, if I look on my line here, there's a rupture in the line. Somehow got caught, maybe got caught on something and got torn. So all I'm gonna do is cut it in half and then put that little guy in there to mend it, and then that will stop that in its tracks. Just washing some greens right now. Harvested a bit of Salanova earlier, immediately put it into the cooler, and then sat for a few hours so it's cool, and now we're washing it. It's warm today, it's like almost 30 degrees Celsius, so that's a hot day. And I've got an assembly line going on here, some drying and sorting, spinning. So those will go back in the cooler, these will go on the screen, these will go in there, and so on and so forth. I'm doing about, I can hand wash about 80 pounds of lettuce in an hour or less, sometimes even 40 minutes. So with this little assembly line, it goes pretty quick. And one thing I did this year, I've mentioned it before, but I'm gonna mention it again, it's made a huge difference in the shelf life of our product and just the vigor of it, is putting these holes in the totes. And so that way when I dry these greens, like these ones are just about done, they don't even need to be fully dry. They go in the cooler and they can breathe because of those holes in the totes, so that's a good thing. All right, well, we've now got all the lettuce out of the greenhouses in here, and we're gonna put fabrics down, and now it's tomatoes in here for the rest of the season. I'll do that. All right, today, well, is the first picking of tomatoes in this greenhouse. It's you know, it's not full-on production yet, but we'll go through here and do a basic thinning harvest. I just want to show you the Sun Golds are doing pretty damn good, all these guys. So there's quite a bit to pick there. All right, it's Friday morning, and as we thought, it is a soaker. We didn't really get much rain yesterday. We did have little periods here and there, but it didn't really stop us from working, but today is a soaker. Fortunately, we don't have any harvesting out to do in the field, which is great. That's kind of why we plan the weeks the way we do. Get most of it done on Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday is just packing and delivering and finishing things up. So right now I'm going to be harvesting all these sunflower shoots, and I'm going to harvest some pea shoots. And that's the only harvesting we need to do for the day. And we always leave it for Friday because we can do it under cover. The weather doesn't affect it at all. Okay, sometimes your knife gets dull. When I harvest microgreens, I use this. It's a Japanese chef's knife. It's called a company called Knifeware, and it's a fantastic knife, but it's gotten a little dull, so I'm going to give it a sharpen. I got this new tool from the dudes at Farmer's Friend LLC. It's called Work Sharp, and it's a knife sharpener. It's fantastic. I'll film me using it, and you can also use it to sharpen the greens harvester. I'll do a video on that later, but right now I'll just sharpen a hand knife with it and show you how cool this tool is. Alright guys, today has turned out to be a real soaker. Soaker, you guys don't have soakers in the US. I never hear people say a soaker. In Canada, we refer to a soaker as if you step in a puddle and your boot gets filled with water, that's a soaker. Or on a day like this where it's piss and rain, that's a soaker. So today is a soaker, and I'm gonna go out and harvest some lettuce in the piss and rain. Here we go. I forgot to mention, I only need this lettuce for one chef who needed more, and you know, it's something we're happy to do sometimes, is top up orders. And some of these guys are really picking up steam with their customers, selling more salads. So we've already got pretty much everything harvested. I just gotta go out and harvest about 10 pounds of lettuce out there. Well, that's it for the week, you guys. We finished early today. We finished at around 1:30, I believe. We had everything packed and delivered, and because of the rain outside, it's kind of inhibited some of the field work that we would have planned to do. So we're just gonna have to do that on Monday, which isn't a big deal. But one thing I wanted to say is I think I'm gonna change the format of these videos. I'm kind of interested in what you guys think. I'm thinking about going to a daily update. So basically it would just be like a vlog. So every day I'll just put up a video, and then I'll save the content videos for once or twice a week or something like that. But I'm finding that editing all this stuff at the end of the week is a lot of work when I don't really want to work near the end of the week. Whereas a daily update to do is easier to kind of turn and burn and get out. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. Anyways, that's the week, and I hope to see you again on Monday. If you guys want to see more in-depth content like what you've been seeing here, but more specific to crops and production and all that kind of stuff, check out my online course, profitableurbanfarming.com, where there's a whole community of people on there. We've got coming up to 200 people in the course now, and we have a Facebook group that's a focus group for the people in the course only, and there's a ton of wicked content in there. I'm posting videos in there all the time too, more in depth than I am on YouTube here. So that's profitableurbanfarming.com, and check out my book where a lot of this stuff is covered in some detail. That's theurbanfarmer.co. And if you guys want to make a donation to the show, it's always welcome and greatly appreciated. You can do that at theurbanfarmer.co/support. All right, we'll see you next time.